Welcome to Chef and DevOps for Pointy-hairs. How many people in the audience here are serving in a technical role? Okay, so most of us. But how many are in a, how many pointy-haired bosses do we have? And how about people who are in a non-technical but also non-managerial role? We have one. Okay, awesome. Here's a little overview of what we're going to be chatting about today. So I'm going to be talking about the need for DevOps and how DevOps and Chef meets that need in a sort of high-level overview that's appropriate for our pointy-haired bosses. And then I'll give some further general tips on explaining any technical topic to non-technical individuals. But first, a little bit about me. I am an operations engineer for the College of Architecture at Texas A&M University. I graduated from A&M back in 2014, and have actually been working with the College of Architecture since I was a freshman back in 2010. I worked my way up from being a student worker on the help desk and worked up through different roles until I got into the role that I'm in today. And as a result of that, I've gotten to grow with my environment as we adopted Chef back in 2013, and I've gotten to grow with that. I love to get to be a chef at home and a chef in the office, and I'm a professional yak shaver. So, huh? Not quite. Some of you are familiar with the term, but the rest of you are wondering what the heck I'm talking about. The term yak shaving was coined by Carlin Vieri at MIT, and it refers to the series of tasks that you need to complete in order to actually complete the task that you wanted to do in the first place. So it can really be applied to any aspect of life, but it's something that we in IT constantly fall victim to. Getting caught up in the little details that it takes to get something done and constantly fighting fires is a part of the culture problem that we have. Business and IT cultures have evolved to be very siloed. So you have separate business silos, and then you have silos within the silos. Everyone does their own thing, and these disjointed pieces are expected to achieve business goals together. Each silo is doing their piece of the puzzle without being able to see the real picture or seeing what these other pieces look like until it comes time to put them together. And some of those pieces aren't going to fit. So that requires extra time to fix, and you end up blowing your deadlines. The momentum of business velocity just keeps getting faster and faster. Businesses have to be able to quickly release changes to be able to keep up with the changing market. Your competitors are adapting, and if you're not willing to adapt too, you're going to become obsolete. For the purposes of our chat today, Dilbert is an applications developer on the dev team, and Alice is a sysadmin on the operations team. Dilbert the developer and Alice the sysadmin work in a classic IT environment where there's essentially a wall between the ops and dev teams. The dev team develops their applications and then tosses them over the wall to the ops team, who's then expected to make it work in production, even though it may have been developed in an environment that's totally different from the one it's going to run in. So the ops team gets backed up because it takes time to set up the systems, and then it takes time to work out the kinks that in order to make the code run on the system in production. They're missing deadlines left and right and aren't meeting customer demand. Alice is mad at Dilbert for always giving her code that won't run on her systems, and Dilbert is mad at Alice for the long lead times. And there's no communication because of this brick wall. And so this vicious cycle continues. But what if there was a solution? What if we could break down this wall and encourage cross-team collaboration and communication? What if there was something that helped your business adapt quickly with the changing market? And the answer is DevOps. DevOps is a cultural movement at its core. It requires organizational change to be truly successful. And while the name implies a combination of dev and ops, and that often becomes a big part of what it means to an organization, it can really be applied to any area of the business. This cultural change can be applied, it's about breaking down walls and getting rid of these silos. We would need to have channels of constructive communication throughout all your teams. So the Phoenix Project. You need to read this book. And if you have read this book, then you should be making sure that your boss and all your colleagues have read this book. It's a phenomenal book that's written in an entertaining novel format, and it explains DevOps and how to successfully implement a DevOps culture. It's written in a way that anyone can read it, and in my opinion, everyone should. This book is what we use in our office to help kickstart our own DevOps journey. The book takes you through a narrative that's about an IT manager who has 90 days to fix an over-budget, overdue project or have his entire department outsourced. It draws correlations between IT and a finely tuned manufacturing plant. It helps you identify the problems that you have in your organization and find ways to solve them. The ways are the lessons imparted to the main character by the mentor in the book. And these are ways that you need to affect change in your organization. The first way emphasizes the performance of the entire system. Everyone must be concerned with the final product. You need to take ownership of the whole project. The second way talks about feedback from ops back to dev and vice versa, so that the improvements can be made. It's about communication, and you need to open channels of communication across your teams. The third way is about setting up a culture of continual experimentation and improvement. You need a fast-moving, iterative development. So Dilbert and Alice's organization is ready to jump on board with the DevOps culture. And so they tear down this wall that they have between their teams and start working together. A critical part of the success here is communication and feedback loops. Dilbert and Alice keep each other informed about the status of projects and issues, and Dilbert isn't just throwing applications over into the abyss over the wall and expecting Alice to work some magic to make them work. Alice can talk to Dilbert about systems requirements, and Dilbert can develop the application with the system in mind. Everyone is on the same page, and they work together to address issues as they arise, rather than being hunkered down into their silos and not talking to each other. They share the same big picture and are invested in the project as a whole. Dilbert and Alice care about their work and the quality of others' work. In my office, we have a very small team, so it made adopting a DevOps culture easier for us than it might be at a large corporation. But I'm managing our web infrastructure, and I work very closely with our web developer to deliver our services. Since we adopted DevOps around the same time that I got into systems administration, this is the norm to me. I don't know, I can't imagine being pitted against the web team instead of having constant exchange to make sure that we're delivering the best product in the right way. So there's a lot of benefits that organizations often find when it comes to adopting a DevOps culture. And the bottom line is you're going to have happier, less stressed employees. It's easier for your employees to focus on what excites them most, probably developing and building new things, rather than the constant firefighting, fixing issues, and babysitting existing services. Happier employees are more productive employees. There are a lot of different tools in the DevOps toolkit, and you'll find that DevOps actually shares a lot of tools and procedures with the Agile business practice, and that has a lot to do with, that's something that it actually stemmed from. Other DevOps tools can be used by organizations that haven't adopted the cultural change, and it's possible to use them without adopting the culture, but a full adoption of the culture change in addition to using the tools is what gives you the full benefits of the DevOps movement. Automate, automate, automate. You can't have DevOps without some automation. And a good way to improve workflows and productivity is with a configuration management tool. which is essentially a way to automate systems management and software deployment. And since we're at ChefConf, let's talk about Chef. Dilbert and Alice have implemented the culture changes and are communicating, but they need a physical tool to supplement their culture change. So enter Chef. Chef allows them to develop a code base to orchestrate application deployments and can provide a solution in disaster recovery situations. It provides a unified solution. Dilbert and Alice can use the same tool rather than using their own cobbled together tools to bring the pieces together. Dilbert can use Chef to bring the pieces of his application and deploy them, and Alice can use Chef to manage her infrastructure and allows her to deploy even thousands of servers in a very short amount of time. They can quickly iterate through new releases and keep up with market demand. They will have happier customers and can very easily scale and grow as needed. But Chef isn't really just one tool. It's a toolkit depending on how you want to use it. We've already mentioned the automation of systems and software development, and this can be done with the open source Chef server. So as you can see here, you have some tools on your workstation, and you can send the cookbooks up into the Chef server, and the Chef server can then talk to all your nodes. Other open source tools are Habitat and Inspec. Habitat is a new approach to the automation that focuses on the application rather than the infrastructure. With Habitat, the apps that you build, deploy, and manage behave consistently on any platform. You'll spend less time on the environment and more time building features. Inspec allows you to bring your security team into the party. It's a testing framework with human and machine readable language that allows you to manage the compliance and security of your applications continuously with coded policies. So Chef is built on an open source platform and has some open source components, but Chef Software has also developed some wonderful commercial products on top of that, which has evolved to be the new Chef Automate, which is branded as a DevOps platform and allows you to have a unified workflow, end-to-end visibility, and automated compliance. So you can see on the bottom we have the three open source tools that Chef provides, and Automate provides a platform on top of that that allows you to pull in things from those three tools and allows you to have visibility across all your nodes and allows you to control your workflow. So you can achieve continuous delivery of your applications. But one of the best components of the Chef family is the Chef community. Because of its home in the open source realm, a fantastic community has been built around Chef. And this community wants you to succeed in whatever you're doing. Now that Dilbert and Alice have begun to use Chef and automate their environment, they will find themselves freed up to focus on new and exciting development, perhaps even what to automate next, rather than the mundane day-to-day that can be handled with the automation of Chef. And because Chef easily automates things that you have to do often, it greatly reduces the room for human error. You know exactly what it's going to do, and it's going to do it exactly when you tell it to do it. It'll do it the same way every time. Your services can become more reliable because you can count on Chef to manage them and keep them up. And these benefits mean the world of difference in our changing market. So now let me share some tips for explaining technical topics to non-technical people. Some of the principles that I just used to explain DevOps and Chef. Dilbert and Alice have trouble when it comes to needing to explain things to their pointy-haired boss. I personally have the advantage of having a boss that moved up from a technical role, so at least he knows just enough to get him by. But not all of us are that fortunate. We often find ourselves having to explain something technical, something that we may hold near and dear to someone who is non-technical, and we might have trouble breaking that down for them. But tip number one is don't listen to Dilbert. I'm going to share some do's and don'ts that should help though. So it's easier to be engaged when you know what to expect. For example, at the beginning, I gave you an outline of what we were going to talk about, and you also already know when the session is scheduled to end. So with that knowledge, you're able to set reasonable expectations coming in, and it makes it easier to pay attention. You don't want to make assumptions about what people know. It's better to say something that they already know than to leave something out. It may seem tedious to you, but you don't want to gloss over fundamentals. It could be key to your audience understanding anything you say at all. You don't want your listeners to miss out on the rest of what you're saying because you left out the basics. If you're talking to your boss, then you probably are already familiar with what he or she does or doesn't know. But if it's an audience that you're less familiar with, then you want to ask questions to help gauge their knowledge, such as what I use to get an audience demographic at the beginning of my talk. But in a one-on-one or small group, you have a better opportunity to get better information than I can get with just a show of hands. Don't rush through what you have to say. This is, of course, good advice no matter the presentation or audience. No one can grasp what you have to say if you rush through at 100 miles a minute. Everyone comes into situations with certain expectations. Expectations can often get in the way of understanding. A non-technical individual, particularly someone who hasn't met you before, may have an extremely stereotypical expectation about you, the technical expert who's coming in to explain something to them. You want to surprise them. There's nothing I like more than defying expectations. While technical individuals really care about features, non-technical individuals are much more easily sold on benefits. When you're preparing, go through the list of features that excite you and think about why. What does this feature do to benefit me, my department, or my company as a whole? It's often helpful to use familiar concepts to explain new concepts. I've been using a Dilbert analogy today, but it can be as simple as comparing a slow-running service to a major highway, such as I-35 out there. Too many users is like too many cars on the road at rush hour. The best way to sell something to someone is to show them why it matters to them. Interest is often directly proportional to personal investment. For management, decision drivers are often monetary ones. So you're going to have to show that the benefits outweigh the costs. So you're going to ask yourself, in what ways does this save us money? And in what ways does it make us money? It's critical that you listen to your audience and use their questions to help you adapt your content to make sure that you're getting your point across. Questions often bring up a different perspective, and it will help you see from their point of view and further their understanding. Don't focus on your audience. Don't focus on trying to make your audience understand at the level that you do. They're usually only concerned with a high-level, big picture. And it can be hard to find a balance between making sure that your audience has enough information and oversharing. So don't get caught up in the minute details. Avoid using jargon that has no meaning to your audience. We love our acronyms, and we have a lot of phrases and jargon that have no meaning to other people. And then even each different technical sector has all their own jargon. So you have to do your best to use terminology that requires little or no explanation, because having to explain even the words you're using makes it really hard to hold everyone's attention. It can be easy to bring in content that really is irrelevant. So try to keep a clear path. When you're explaining something technical, it's very easy to begin talking about something and then realize that you really can't explain this one little piece, you just drop it and move on, and that just causes confusion. You need to decide ahead of time what is essential. Never sit in a high and mighty position and lord your knowledge over someone. The quickest way to shut your listener down is to talk down to them. And sometimes people just don't get what you're trying to say. It happens. It's easy to be passionate about something and excitedly explain it to someone who just doesn't get what you're saying. But you don't want to get flustered. So with these tips, Dilbert and Alice should be able to have an easier time navigating meetings with the pointy-haired boss. But let's face it, it's still going to be a minefield. So hopefully you have an easier go. But to recap, we've discussed why we need DevOps, and we've gone over a high-level overview of what Chef and DevOps means, or how it meets that need. And we've talked about some principles on explaining any technical topic to non-technical people. So I hope everyone learned something. Are there any questions that I can answer?